Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, December 17th, starting a little bit later today, but not terribly late. So I finished, for the accountability section, I finished Batman, the Telltale series. It's awful. It slanders Bruce Wayne's father for a while there, slanders Bruce Wayne's mother. It completely lets you control Bruce Wayne slash Batman, so he does things that are obviously going to be out of character from what you expect because you're controlling him and you can play him. If anything, I played Bruce Wayne and Batman as a much nicer guy than I think they usually depict him in comic books. We have a live stream Sears Globe reward. I don't think I've used any Sears Globe even from the beginning of playing this game, and I still probably only have maybe 5 or 6 of them. We have a special event for cards here. Buy 10 packs free. Sure. It's kind of like a Christmas event, I guess. So they slander Batman. I think it is worth spoiling the end. There is a rating they give you at the very end of the Batman Telltale series where they determine through several decisions you make throughout the entire 5 episodes whether you played as a merciful Batman or a brutal Batman. Now, in the first episode, there's a very obvious example of this in which you are forced to threaten to break the arm of a bad guy who's already been captured for information, just torturing him basically. And you can actually break his arm or try to break his arm, and I chose not to do that. So I ended up with a 100% merciful Batman. There are some other metrics, and frankly, it might have been better if they just told you those what they were measuring to begin with. None of it really changes anything. It just changes the bars and the numbers at the end of the game. Your decisions will probably slightly affect how the story plays out also. There is a news reporter, Vicky Vale. Unless I just don't know something about how her story goes in the comic books, it seems like they do something incredibly crazy with Vicky Vale, and her motivations for her actions later on don't fully make sense. There is a odd child abuse revelation that happens in the last episode. It was hinted at and fairly obvious previously, but they then became very explicit around that aspect too. Like, when you have somebody gouging out their parents' eyes and their mom's eyes and beating their father to death, and then beating their father with a belt and then hanging them in the closet with a belt, you can pretty much tell there's some real personal hate there that tends to only be written from the form of some form of abuse. So when they later show a torture dungeon of where this abuse happened, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that coming. You're really just insulting my intelligence. Batman, a Telltale series, is rated M for mature, and it's just totally insulting the audience. I'm gonna open 10 packs here. I think we have a new expansion here, or at least a new add-on. So now would be the time to open another 10 packs. And then we'll evaluate how many new cards have been added to the expansion. Plus, I'm just kind of sitting on gold. In fact, I may just get it down to like 50 gold anyways. They bring in characters in the Batman Telltale series to do nothing with them. They kind of slander Alfred in a lot of ways. They give Batman, they have Batman using drones with guns on them, which violates the core conceit. They bring in characters just to kill them off for no reason. There's way too much characters. They bring in Catwoman and pretend like she's going to be a romance interest, but even though it's rated M for mature, they're too much of a wimp, I guess, to actually show any nudity or sex or they're too bad of writers to actually write any real romance. So at the end of the day, you don't end up in any way. There's no chance that you're going to end up together with Catwoman. Which, since Batman the Telltale series is kind of a retelling of Batman Year One, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, there needs to be a while in which Batman is just chasing Catwoman as a criminal, and they don't even really give you that much. There was a point also at the end of the game where it would have made a lot of sense for this to be kind of a Year One Batman reveal, where it could have explained where Gotham became overrun with supervillains versus being run by Falcone and the other mobsters that ran Gotham. But they didn't even commit to that, so it's just kind of awful all over the place. There's all kinds of visual glitches. There's really no gameplay mechanics. Like, the only thing I frankly wouldn't be upset if they took the Telltale concept and then threw in some very basic turn-based RPG gameplay mechanics. As much as I sometimes wonder if JRPGs need the fighting and could just tell the story alone, maybe you do kind of need that grindy gameplay just to make it feel like a video game. At the way Telltale games go, particularly the Batman Telltale game, I didn't want any of the QuickTime events to happen. I just wanted to sit back and watch a cutscene anytime that happens. There was one time when they did the thing I thought they should have been doing from the beginning. They paused time, had Batman plot out how he was going to attack a bunch of people in the room, and then played it out. But you still have to press the QuickTime events after you've planned it out. It would have made a lot more sense to just pause time and plan out your actions and then sit back for 5 minutes and watch the fight happen. You might even try to integrate the dialogue mechanic. Like, the better you choose the better you choose your dialogue when conversing with people, the more action points you have and the better the fights go in the cutscenes. That'd be an interesting thing. Another thing they don't do in Telltale games is they don't have like any kind of internal mental dialogue, so it's not like I'm hearing what Bruce Wayne is thinking, and that only helps to create a situation where let's open 6 more, just get down to 5,000. Yeah, it's led to several times where I picked something thinking it was going to be the lines of dialogue were going to say one thing, and then they send out a completely different meaning. So there's just this opportunity for misunderstanding, where arguably the Mass Effect Paragon system, where the right answer is always going to be aggressive and the left answer is always going to be passive, or however it actually worked. That system sounds like it would work a lot better for Telltale games. But yeah, I was definitely not happy with Batman. And then I wasn't particularly happy with my own performance in the next thing I tried to play / ended up spotlighting and kind of soft rage quitting, which was Fallout 1. I was going to go from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, but actually I haven't ever gotten around to buying Fallout 2 or the Brotherhood Tactics spin-off game. Um, but yeah, because of a very awkward interface in Fallout 1, we have to right click a lot to cycle between different modes, and it changes your cursor. It took me like 40 minutes to realize how I was even doing things. The text, even in the high res double resolution mode, is still a little difficult to read. And it was definitely a game that, while Fallout 1 is probably only 30 hours compared to Fallout 2 being about 60 hours, from what I researched. If all you're going to do is pretty much just have people have talking to you through text and have entire things described to you in text, Fallout 1 is basically a text dungeon crawler with visuals added on top of it. And it's a very small overworld. It really doesn't have an overworld as much as it just has squares that you walk through in a map, and then sometimes you'll run into random encounters. And when you do run into a random encounter, you are effectively only seeing an empty world around the enemies that attacked you. So yeah, there's not a lot of desire there to play that, even from the beginning. I feel like they could have easily remade the events of Fallout 1 in some kind of Unreal Engine. Even now, it would make a lot of sense to remake the events of Fallout 1, Fallout 2. Make them smaller games, sell them for like $5. That would be where my focus would be. Even the Fallout Shelter, which was the game I looked at after playing Fallout 1 for about an hour, and not even making it from Vault 13 to like Vault 15, which that was like the very first place you were supposed to go. I couldn't even figure out how to end up going into Vault 15, but I made it to a city in between, saw that it was a very empty city, and pretty much left it at that. There is a slight difference between something like Diablo, which has action, just consistent action, and Fallout 1, which has action points and turn-based attacks. And arguably, maybe I just would never be super interested in turn-based attacks anyways. How much vials do I have? That's probably not really a lot. If I was gonna just start trying to like craft anything. Let's see, we'll go down here and see if we have crafted everything silver. Seems like we have already. So we'd be up to gold at this point. As far as crafting things. But yeah, it definitely felt like I would have to struggle to read every single description of what's going on, because everything is just like in this tiny little text screen. Honestly, you could probably put a text-to-speech engine on it and just say the Pip-Boy will tell you what's happening, important things. Also, you could definitely have put some more sound effects if you were going to remake Fallout 1. But while Bethesda's main team is working on Starfield, and now that Microsoft owns them, it would make a lot of sense to remake Fallout 1 and 2. to just get a new feel, to move to a new engine, get away from the Bethesda, whatever Skyrim engine existed before then, because that engine is not polished, and it's not worth sticking to. But yeah, so I gave up on that, and then I tried to look at Fallout Shelter a second time just to see if we could get to the new content, and there is some slightly new surprising content for Fallout Shelter, but you still have just a ridiculous amount of microtransactions, and it really is just an advertisement for Fallout 76 that it has that timer wait. I actually watched a speed run of how you would play Fallout Shelter, and it literally is just moving the clock a week ahead and cheating the game. So you get weekly rewards to get gold, or bottle caps in this instance, and once you have the bottle caps, the currency, you can then, once you've amassed a massive amount of it, you can then just buy whatever you need, and that's really the only limitation in the entirety of the game. It takes about a week apparently for a pregnant lady in Fallout Shelter to give a baby, so, or for the baby to grow up or something. So there's just these hard limitations, and there's a real argument that Fallout Shelter 2 should be remade. There is also, I think, an argument that you could remake Fallout 1 and 2 in the Fallout Shelter art style, and maybe just merge them all as these smaller side games, mobile games. Trying to play Fallout Shelter with a controller is not really efficient, since it is a game totally designed to be played on cell phones. And it's really a shame, because Fallout Shelter actually was fairly well received from what I recall when it first came out. I think people dropped off of it fairly quickly. Like, I couldn't get more than 20 minutes into the game before I'd hit 2 or 3 just points of running out of gold. And yeah, in the speed run, it was basically a 20-minute speed run where you spent 15 minutes moving the clock forward. And yeah, that's not really something that makes a good game. So I never got to the point where you could go on quests. They have added outfits and items, but not a lot. Clearly the game was abandoned at some point. Because I'm playing this in December, they were giving me all kinds of like Christmas themed items, and there was Christmas lights on the trees in the wasteland, which is cute, but also it's an example of content that very few people may even see. It's not like Fallout Shelter came out right around December originally. So yeah, since I don't really care to just wait and buy Fallout 2 and Fallout Brotherhood Tactics just to spotlight them and also say these are games I'm not going to play, I'm going to move to the next game chronologically, which is Fallout 3. This is all being done in a slight effort to A, get into RPG games, and B, to eventually get around to playing the Fallout 4 game that was gifted to me so graciously, and I have done a terrible job of actually getting around to playing it. I still need to get the DLC for Fallout 4, but yeah, and I definitely am never going to play Fallout 76. I guess I could replace this Forcecraft and Dragoncraft. I don't even know what I'd want to replace it with. If anything, I should probably start thinking about replacing one of these. We have an arena run. The Winter Cup. Free entry, 3 days remaining. Doesn't seem like it's going to be a very long winter
We draw closer.
Okay. See, the problem here is you kind of need to know what these cards do, and since I've only really been sticking to cards in pre-built decks, I still don't really like understand. Like, I really don't know what a lot of these cards do still, so I can't really build a deck. They want you to spend effectively 20 minutes when picking out cards like this, looking at 4 different cards, agonizing over your decision, and I just don't find that worth my time ever. I don't care about Shadowverse enough to give it my time like that. So then you just boil down to, well, these are lower quality than these, so let's take these. And then that doesn't tend to help you much either, because the proper way to do this would be to have some kind of strategy and understanding of what cards you're grabbing. And when I was doing this with Magic the Gathering and you were doing a drafts, there was just a lot more cards that you interacted with and I understood and knew how they worked. Maybe that is an argument to say that Shadowverse's cards visually are too consistent, and whereas Magic the Gathering's cards possibly stand out from each other a little bit more. That could be the case, but it also is probably just a lot of lack of interest on my part. So yeah, my next steps are to start playing Fallout 3, which, yeah, it's going to be an attempted speed run. I'm definitely going to try to see sections I didn't see when I first played Fallout 3. I didn't do any of the DLC for Fallout 3 either, so that'll all be new stuff. But I am going to definitely not try to min-max it and get like all the bottle caps or anything crazy like that. Select an allied amulet, put a copy up in the hands of Ooh, okay.
The best cure for the blues, you know.
Interesting. So we could have multiples of these now. And this would, if this evolved, would take 1 off of this, which isn't much.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Now, don't push.
Sorry, I've gone quiet there. Yeah, I guess I don't really have anything else to say. I'll try and play Fallout 3, try to keep it fairly quick. I mean, I want to fairly quickly play all of Fallout 3 and then move on to Fallout New Vegas. Arguably, I might want to just skip Fallout 3, but I think it deserves to be covered. Even though I played it before I started being a YouTuber. One would hope that it runs better and is more patched. Compared to how it was originally. evolve in one turn. I guess that means we'll just
Eternal
hit this one too. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to go into the video game news. I guess for accountability section reasons also, I'll say I did send out that email to Censored Gaming. We'll see if he ever sees it. There's kind of some weirdness on Twitter messaging if you don't follow somebody, where it's kind of easy to not see that comments, and I don't know if Censored Gaming's Twitter is checked that often anyways. And I don't know if people are that big into using Twitter these days anyways. Well, like YouTube, after making its whole we're getting rid of dislikes buttons, came back with an effectively a YouTube rewind, even though they're not calling it that, and they flooded everybody's feed with it if you happen to follow YouTube, which arguably very few people do follow YouTube's.
You were done for.
feed. But what they did stupidly was put many different languages of the exact same YouTube Rewind thing up at the same time. So there was about 6 different announcements for this live stream, 6 different live streams. And it was supposed to be basically YouTube Rewind with a lot of interaction, and it was heavily focusing on the lo-fi beats to listen to while studying girl, which that was probably closer to 2019 than even than even 2020 or 2021. And it's kind of dangerous, certainly, to have that be your main theme and highlight the fact that a manipulator, as far as the lo-fi beats to listen to, became so incredibly successful and popular on YouTube. Like, YouTube should be furious that the lo-fi beats to listen to was so incredibly popular, not promoting it, because it often, I assume, was playing lo-fi versions of copyrighted music it didn't have the copyright to, and that at best, if you're going to try to make a at best, if you were trying to make a parody argument, I still think that would probably not hold up much in court. But also, that system, only the lo-fi beats to listen to, really hurt real content creators, people really trying to create something, by just turning YouTube into a pirate radio. And honestly, it highlights a flaw in the fact that a lot of people do just want to listen to noise or music, and they don't want to use YouTube for the thing it's useful for. And there's always that danger in any business where you find out, oh, the chewing gum is better than the dishwasher soap. That's a old thing where they would pack in free chewing gum with a pack of laundry soap, and then they found the chewing gum was more popular than the laundry soap, and then they stopped making the laundry soap. But there's a danger in that. If your stated goal is to do one thing, and then you're just pivoting to the thing that gets you more money, well, then you're just like every other corporation that's soulless and money grubbing, where I'd like to see some businesses actually stick to the things they want to do. I imagine there are
Miracles are born by my
Um,
hand.
Show me what you can do.
I'll smash you good.
there are many companies that could try to pivot away from things and make more money. Phone companies are kind of a great example of that, where they were making all kinds of money doing phone services, and as soon as people stopped really using those phone services, they've started acquiring AT&T starts acquiring like Warner Brothers for some insane reason, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. Okay.
Pain, go away! Come on, smile!
Run while you can.
Yep, I think I've won here. Interesting. So yeah. It would only be more true to the farce that is the people in charge of running YouTube if they come back now that they've done the YouTube Rewind and said, oh, we've heard your responses that everybody hates the dislike button. Arguably, I've heard some people claim they brought back the 2 15-second unskippable ads. I've got ad blockers on YouTube, so I don't even watch it, but like, they could have easily gotten rid of the dislikes that hide the fact that they brought something else people would hate. But it would be funny if they said, alright, we're going to bring back the dislike count. But pretty much at this point, they have to stick to their guns, otherwise they're going to just look really stupid. Okay. We can let this guy die.
Splendid!
We can play this.
We're just getting started, right? Pain, go away!
And... Go and just evolve this
The real battle
now.
begins. 1, 2...
And then the YouTube official blog has a 11 tips from one of the YouTube's fastest growing creators, which immediately it's Squid Game related, which clearly that's gonna that's gonna go away quickly. They're really promoting this short. I mean, their total idea here, I have no idea who this Jake guy is that they want to destroy Instagram, and then once Instagram is gone, they'll abandon and they'll give up about caring about it. Like, I have not seen any short that really seems that particularly interesting. Very few of the people I follow have tried to do shorts. I think I'm probably not the target audience, though. Also, I like the idea here that content is king, no clickbaiting. And then seems like repetition is key, which that is true, I think, for Instagram, certainly, is that you just make the same gag over and over again in Instagram and then YouTube Shorts. So Like, repetition is something I would hate.
Frontal attack.
Like, arguably, some of the stuff I may do is a little bit repetitive, but not really. Let's see.
Let us conclude.
He managed to keep himself alive one more time. But yeah. I don't know how you would do YouTube Shorts and cover video games in particular. I think it's just one of many categories that would be disenfranchised and are being disenfranchised and given an unfair shake with the YouTube Shorts. Even if you got like really cool 360 no scope style kills a lot. I don't think a lot of people want to watch something that's that short. Now, arguably, also people don't want to see the kind of footage I make, where things are which are set way too long. What is the sacred teachings and forbidden teachings? Yeah, let's go ahead and play this first.
You were done for. Yeah, I can't even begin to think of any way that I could use shorts. And that's why I haven't tried to do anything with them. In a lot of ways, if I was going to do anything with shorts, it would be something fairly annoying. It would just be a premiere announcement. It would just be a commercial for whatever next game I'm going to cover. Like, there's just no level of speeding up. That is ridiculous that I lost there. That is insane. Like, I had that in the bag for 3 or 4 turns, and he managed to turn it around. Anyways, we're going to run late if I don't start moving forward. So we have a game here called Aspire's Ina's Tale. Over the weekend, I am going to try and work on the macro some more. And I'm also going to riskily update the speeds on my Wi-Fi router after resetting all the settings to default and making it too slow. We've had a full week and I haven't had a single slowdown or disconnect, which arguably should tell me to just leave good enough alone, but I'm going to turn up the 5G at least and give it a week and see if there's somehow the 5 gigahertz spectrum router radio was affecting the 2.4 gigahertz radio. And I'm just going to try to make one specific change. Now, in the long run, if that works for another week, then next week I'll turn up the channel width on the 2.4 gigahertz radio. I may even need to make a few tweaks there. There's kind of more settings on the old technology than the new technology.
but I want to take it very slow and have a very long burn in. That log4j Java library seems to be affecting a lot of people, and arguably some of the like Docker images on my server, which I haven't turned on in months, might need to be rebuilt for that, but I don't think I really have anything running at the moment that I need to focus on that for. Otherwise, if I was like more doing IT stuff, it probably would be driving me crazy. Oh, as far as this game, I'm gonna put it on the follow list. It looks interesting enough. $9.74, several languages here. Epic Games Store is once again having high traffic, but in fairness, it seems to be slow loading times and purchasing troubles, not full shutdowns or identified bugs. They are having their holiday sale right now, so that's almost to be expected, although that's not really a good excuse. And I will say the Epic Store's Twitter feed has gotten better about not just highlighting every single flaw and bug that happens on their storefront, because they were really embarrassing themselves. Video Games Chronicle says Halo Infinite update targets quick resume issues and missing cosmetics. Elden Ring spoilers are now in the wild following a network test data mine. I would avoid that. A new Animal Crossing patch stops animals suddenly appearing naked, which, I mean, at a certain level, who cares if they're naked? They look perfectly fine to me if they were naked the whole time, versus wearing clothes. It's hardly a case like Nintendo is going to have these guys animated with, they're going to use precious polygons they don't have on a Switch to animate like detailed genitals or breasts on the characters. So yeah, but I imagine Nintendo takes that as kind of a embarrassing thing, just because people can put the headline that Animal Crossing characters are showing up naked. And I could see an argument that because kids might get on the internet and type in Animal Crossing characters naked looking for a fix, they might end up on some Rule 34 porn site showing actual detailed drawings of Animal Crossing characters, which undoubtedly do exist. So there is a potential risk there. Should I evolve here? Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Spider-Man and Mary Jane outfits are coming to Fortnite today.
My hands are tied.
Is this the Spider-Man and Mary Jane of what game?
No! Stop!
Like, or what story? Because this guy doesn't really look like Peter Parker to me, and this Spider-Man outfit actually looks pretty weird too. Even this one looks pretty weird. It's not really the Venom outfit of the past. And then Mary Jane is straight up African American, which, I mean, I was saying just as I was playing the Batman Telltale game that comic books in particular should probably gender and race and just flip a bunch of old white guys that were drawn in the past into other nationalities. Doing it to Mary Jane is a little extreme because she's such an established character, but there are so many Elseworlds and variants and different versions of the same people that I imagine if they did in the comics make some level of a Mary Jane who's African American, she just is killing everything. Yeah, I'm gonna lose here.
Stop! Stop! No!
I envy you.
But yeah. Comics in particular have this problem where they have too many characters. Apparently there's a Harley Quinn replacement I just heard about called Punchline. So that they can separate Harley Quinn into her own comics away from the Joker and still have a Harley Quinn-like character that goes in a different direction. But yeah, comics have the problem of too many characters already, particularly if you start looking at like the golden age of comics where they were just making new characters every single issue and not enough diversity of characters. So replacing some of them with different races and genders makes sense, but there probably is a fine line in the fandom where if you replace an old villain that nobody cares about and gender flip them or something like that, people won't really care enough to want to continue using that character. But if it's too common of a character, people will get upset. So you need to find that almost impossible to reach middle, where it's a character people kind of care about, but not that much. I would say probably Hawk and Dove are decent examples of that. As far as characters in the Spider-Man universe, I think you could easily kill off and have characters replace other characters. For instance, like the Rhino as a character, you could probably kill off the original Rhino and then have someone else take up his mantle fairly easily, and not too many people would care. I think it would be too much of a smack in the face to potentially gender flip Sandman and then have Sandwoman, or a woman playing Sandman, going by the name Sandman is probably too much. But
While you can.
and some of the Spider-Man movie I think was kind of in that direction. There was a couple of characters, and so I wonder if this is from the oh, these are from the movie No Way Home, so it's the movie which they've done it. I was thinking the Spider-Man cartoon, Sony cartoon. This is fairly cheesecakey as far as an outfit. It's fairly tight sweater and rather flashy skirt. Yep. For Christmas. Yeah, there always is this kind of weirdness. And I feel like if they were going to give a cheesecake outfit for her, then they probably should have given a cheesecake outfit for him also. So I guess Fortnite's still succeeding fairly well. She just like organic web spinnered something So in the let's see. In the movie, maybe this is a Mary Jane
To the dark.
that is also a Spider-Man, Spider-Woman. Or maybe they just did that for Fortnite. And then the last part of this video is really weird because you have just like random snowman, random gun, quests and rewards that are just random things. And then you have what definitely looks like something from like a Genshin Impact tie-in or some anime mobile game tie-in. And I don't even know what this Anubis character is from as far as outfits. So it's not all about Spider-Man and TV movie tie-ins. No Way Home is, I think, the latest live-action Spider-Man movie, but I'm not paying much attention to the Spider-Man movies, certainly. And honestly, it feels like the Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to really struggle to not be perceived as being done after Endgame. Like, I just don't... I don't think as many people as they would hope are willing to take the next journey to the next phase of
Wait, what's this?
of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just going to get weirder and weirder. I'm supposed to be talking about video games. Moving on, the Epic Games Store is giving users unlimited $10, £10 vouchers. Arguably £10 and $10 aren't exactly the same for 3 weeks. Every game priced $14.99 or more will have a coupon automatically applied, which effectively just means everything is $10 cheaper, and it would have made a lot more sense to simply mark down the price of these games by $10, which then probably isn't happening because these game companies and publishers have a minimum price that is advertised, the minimal advertised price, the MAP, I think is what it's called. And they don't want the games to be advertised below that, so instead they're doing these coupon shenanigans.
Dreams. All a farce.
Well, I guess if I had played this.
The real battle begins.
Those wings have fallen wretched.
Let's see. Switch Online gets 5 more Mega Drive games, including Toe Jam and Earl. What are the other games? Let's see. Altered Beast. Something Heady. Swords of Vermilion. Tunisian Fangs 2, I think is what that says. Dynamite Heady. Swords of Vermilion. Thunder Force 2. And Toe Jam and Earl. Which... I do recognize Altered Beast. I don't actually think it's a good game, but it's a very popular, well-known game. And I recognize Toe Jam and Earl, and then these other games I don't recognize at all. And then you have this kind of inconsistent theming between the Sega Genesis and the Master System, and usually when you see like these backgrounds with the grid, that's more Master System covers than Genesis or Mega Drive covers instead of Genesis. No, I actually think I was right the first time. I think it's Master System. That's what I'm talking about. Alright. Let's see. Evolve this one.
Let us conclude.
Play this
I
one.
do believe we have a case.
and then didn't have enough points to play this one. Darn it. Oops. Oh well, that's still probably a work. Video Games Chronicle says Back for Blood's latest update adds a single player campaign mode. Players can now play through the story offline and solo. It also, I think, adds a
I'll never get a chance to speak.
let you use, I guess, booster cards where the previous training mode didn't. And it didn't include any kind of progression. Can't earn supply points. You couldn't earn any progression towards accomplishments, and wouldn't have stat tracking. So, in a lot of ways, this is a mode that should have been there day one. That being said, I don't know if there really is enough of a argument for playing Back for Blood in single player mode, or playing Back for Blood at all. It really may just be kind of a dead concept in general, the 4 players playing against zombie hordes. Yeah, in a lot of ways, Back 4 Blood is another one of those games that was hyped by the mainstream media, and then as soon as it came out the next week, nobody ever talked about it again. I'll be surprised if it even comes up in Game of the Year arguments, which arguably, this would be a great time for me to swear off listening to the Giant Bomb Game of the Year presentations. But I probably won't do that. We are a couple weeks before Christmas week happens, and typically in Christmas week very little is going on. Otherwise, there's just some weird downtime. Moving on, Far Cry 6's Danny Trejo DLC is out now, a month after it accidentally was released early. I don't know if anybody's really playing Far Cry 6 either. We could pretty much say that for every game that came out this year, is that very few people wanted to play games, to play the big AAA games in particular. Arguably, I think, even though people probably had more free time due to just pandemic reasons, they were less in a jolly mood to want to play video games. I feel like a lot of people fell into kind of a depression of sorts, and were probably trolling each other, or arguing with each other on Facebook, or just hyperventilating around the pandemic. And yeah. And that's certainly something I can relate to. Before I started this YouTube channel, there was a good 3 or 4 years where I was just barely playing any video games at all. And I had been a very heavy gamer all my life up until that point. And yeah, I was just not feeling it, and kind of in a bit of a depression as far as playing video games. So I would fully agree that someone's happiness will drastically affect whether or not you whether you enjoy something or want to play video games. Moving on, also a lot of video games got delayed and didn't get released this year, so it's not just people not wanting to play them, it's not having a lot of choices. Video Games Chronicles says Sega's releasing another mini arcade, this time with a vertical screen. This is still probably not going to be on the level of quality versus what you could build or get. Otherwise, it's probably going to have just the built-in 22 games. There was a more retro console FPGA based device called the Analog Pocket that came out a few days ago, and I didn't even care to mention it or talk about it because it is just so much
Time for perennial
a
prayer.
limited product designed to
Now
play
don't push.
old Game Boy games that you actually plug into a slot in the back compared to being an emulator system. Some of the hardware looked nice, sure, but the software really has very little chance of being able to ever like run ROMs, and it's not designed for that. And the FPGA, I don't think, has enough programmable transistors to handle most things, which, and by most things, I don't think it can even really handle NES. Maybe it could handle NES, but wouldn't then be able to handle Super NES games.
Salutation.
So it is just completely in a different field and way too expensive for what it is offering. The Analog Pocket only makes sense if you have a bunch of Game Boy games and you don't want to just rip your games to ROMs, or replace them with ROMs some other way, or rip your save files off the cartridges. Like, that's the only thing that makes any sense, and it still doesn't really make sense. They're looking for a problem that has already been solved. I think FPGAs might, like the Mister, might play a role for the purists out there who want to accurately emulate games, but I think there aren't too many of people out there that are like that, actually. Particularly when you start to look at the cost. Like, the people willing to spend a lot of money to play old games is far outweighed by the people that would just prefer to get free ROMs or spend a little bit of money. That's where the benefit of things like the RetroPie, Raspberry Pi setup is so successful, is that you have a relatively cheap Raspberry Pi that's probably somewhere around $50 to play old games. Instead of buying old consoles, which would cost a lot more. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says, a Video Games Chronicle, always get that backwards. They say a new Ghostbusters game is definitely happening, says Ernie Hudson. And then Winston, Ernie Hudson, who played Winston, says Dana Aykroyd is also involved. In a lot of ways, I think they probably are always in talks. There is questions whether this would be a sequel to the previously existing, somewhat successful. No, it was fairly successful game. The good one, though. Like, you have to say, you have to point out that there was a good one and then there were some bad ones.
You were done for.
Destruction and return to the void.
It's not like the new Ghostbusters movie did particularly well. It did a lot better than the females Ghostbusters movie. I'll grant you that. There wasn't any big hate or controversy around it. But I don't think too many people went out and saw the new Ghostbusters movie just because of the pandemic, and I don't feel like people that did see it were blown away by it. So if you make a new Ghostbusters game and it's its own standalone thing and it's good, that would be great. We want to see these efforts in the same way that we kind of want to see a Star Wars game made all the time, even though a lot of the Star Wars games aren't that good or aren't impactful. There was that Star Wars game that came out a couple of years ago that got a lot of hype and looked interesting, and I would love to play it at some point, but it doesn't really matter.
You must die.
It didn't add anything to the Star Wars canon. It didn't affect anything. And I feel like Ghostbusters game would be the exact same case. And usually we have plenty of games to play. Movie tie-ins usually tend to be too expensive for their own good. Moving on, Neon Abyss is free on the Epic Games Store, but only for 24 hours. Because they're giving away a different mystery game every day until December 13th, which I guess means I need to check the Epic Games Store every day if I care, which I probably don't. Let's go and play that. Let's see, video game, no, this is actually a Komatsu article. Figment 2 Creed Valley adds a Switch version and launches February 2022. Figment 2, I guess, would be the sequel to Figment 1, and it's not the game I was thinking of. I was thinking of a different kind of cell phone game with isometric perspective. But, yeah. Yeah, I haven't played any of the Figment games, obviously. I was thinking of a mobile game that has Valley in the name. I think it may just be called Valley. Moving on, Neptunia X Sinra Kagura Ninja Wars for Switch has debut trailers and screenshots. It's due out March 17th. Unless I was thinking of a different game, this Switch version has a new extremely hard mode, which maybe argues that the game is a little too easy, and it's exclusive to the Switch and not coming, and they've said they have like no plans to add it to the PlayStation 4, which that might give us some small indication that yes, we will start to see cases where other content may get snuck or patched into the Switch versions of Neptunia X Senran Kagura, potentially bringing the game to be a better experience, whether or not that's adult content or more lewd content, or whether that's just better gameplay content and just being nicer to Nintendo than Sony. We'll have to keep an eye out and see if any of that happens. But what that does open the door for is a potential hope, and it is at best really only a small hope, that the Neptunia Three Sisters or Little Sisters game, which they're going to release next, might also go in more of that direction, sticking to what they traditionally the Neptunia games and the Senran Kagura games have been. Although arguably it may not really prove much of anything, because the Neptunia games tended to not have the lewd content. It was the Senran Kagura games that had it, so we may never even see another Senran Kagura game, and the Neptunia games with the Three Sisters might go a little bit more censored also, and that's the way it kind of seemed like it was going. It seems like they're trying to soft reboot with the Little Sisters game. Let's see. Should I just wait? Moving on, Gamatsu, the DNF Duel has a Kunoichi trailer.
Fear and despair
Which-
are no match for me.
That's Ninja.
The light of courage will pierce the darkness.
Where I've heard ninjas referred to as Kunoichi. I don't know if that's a specific name of a person ninja or a female ninja or what. But I don't know what it really would translate to. But yeah, we are still consistently having DNF Duel give out an advertisement pretty much every day. Well, this is interesting.
I cannot pray to the gods for this.
Hmm.
You were done for.
I pray the gods, or would you stop that already?
Let's see. Gamatsu has the King of Fighters 15 second open beta test climax super special moves trailer, which, yeah, that is a mouthful to say the least. You can see a lot of highlights of super special moves that are probably like the last move. Apparently this character has a pillow and is half asleep or something. Some fairly varied looking characters. Even through the blurriness. Yeah, King of Fighters looks slightly interesting for a fighting game. I'm still not sure. I really can't stick my toe in trying to cover RPG games, particularly trying to get over to JRPG games. There's a real risk here. I'm going to play Fallout 3 and then still not get to Ni no Kuni at the end of that. And so I am potentially picking something more of a Western game first.
Questioning God's design is meaningless.
Okay. Moving on, Gamatsu says a roguelike adventure game called Vivid Night is now available for the Switch in Japan and Korea.
You are done for.
Let's see what this looks like in actual gameplay.
Everyone, get behind me!
Yeah, it looks kind of cutesy. See, I could definitely see something like this for Fallout 1. Like, since there really isn't a lot of gameplay there, just better depictions of how the special stats and everything goes. You could definitely make something like this, and frankly just hire out a Japanese company that makes games like this all the time and just put a lot more animations on it, modernize it, and then sell it as a mobile game for like $5 or free to play with ads. Just to keep people interested in the Fallout universe, or try to even slightly expand on the Fallout universe. Yeah, I think I'm gonna lose here at this rate. Okay. Random enemy followers. 3. What increases a union burst? Just turn. Okay. Do this. Do this.
Welcome to the Holy Gun Show.
do this.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
The real battle
Evolve this, I guess.
I shall crack my knuckles upon your face.
Darn it. If I had just evolved one, I could have played this. Maybe. Yeah. And this would have done 5 damage to everything, and it still would have lost. So, it doesn't matter. Moving on. Gamatsu says, Moon for PC launches December 16th.
My hands are tied.
Moon feels like an old game. Yeah, it's a 1997 game, which is oddly the exact same year as Fallout, and it looks a lot slightly better than Fallout 1. Like, even in comparison there, that it kind of fails. A game called Royal Anapoko Academy is now available in Japan, and boy is this a lot of characters. But I am completely uncertain as to what kind of game this is. It kind of looks like an RPG game. Yeah. Seems like it's an RPG game with maybe some larger groups of people fighting each other, or groups of 4 fighting each other in different layout areas. So kind of a positional placement concept. Probably not anything of super interest, but looks fine. So much for hopes of wins. But yeah. I'm not sure I got the free tickets ever. And, you know, if I was to come over here to the arena, I don't think we've even done this in a while. Let's see, open 6. You keep everything when you open 6. Whereas take 2, you don't keep anything. So in the next expansion, I probably should try to use up all of these tickets, because I don't think I'm going to make it at this rate to the next expansion, after the next expansion. But yeah, I was getting like green tickets, and these tickets here are yellow. So what else would tickets even be used for? You don't use tickets to buy anything here. Apparently you can now go back and get battle pass things you missed. I don't feel like the zombie revenge thing happened recently either. Yeah, there's very little as far as sleeves. Yeah. This game has still never given me a single premium currency. Just zero desire to even let you get a tease. Do have a lot of these, so I could, like, I think buy this, but I don't know if this would just try and get you to purchase things, or if this would convert. See his globe shards. I mean, I guess you do that, because there's really no reason not to do that. But you can only even go that far anyways. So unless there's a shop where you could buy pre-built decks. Which I think there is, but it's over here. These are all crystals too. Okay, here's the green tickets. So I have 9 entries in which I could go back and do an arena run. But there's literally no reason why I would want to do that. And then for the daily quests for the rest of the day, it's just going to be, can we get Forestcraft or Dragoncraft ranked wins? And it's probably going to be a struggle, certainly, to do that. I already want to just like wrap up this Friday. I'm already feeling tired. Start late and still end up feeling tired. Sleep in and still end up feeling tired. It never ends with me, frankly. Let's cover some games.
My quarry won't escape that easy. This one's
Here we
for
have a
my
game
family.
on Steam called Do Something Part 1, which I hate the idea of a game being called Part 1. It looks like it's an asset flip game. They're calling it a survival horror puzzle game. She just clipped completely through that bench. Sadly, these asset flip games are getting better looking. I mean, this does not look terrible. Like, it's not far enough away from something like the Resident Evil remake for my tastes. $2.39 allegedly full audio and several other languages. Here we have Pixel Maker game series, which I think anything with Pixel Maker game series in the name I can probably immediately dismiss. $4.49 English and Japanese. Yeah, if you're specifically labeling your game based on some series you're trying to cross promote, then you're not focusing enough on the game in particular. Here we have something called Starry Night, which seems to be using the art style of the Van Gogh painting Starry Night to make what really just looks like a side-scrolling hack and slash game, which I don't think really connects or makes sense. This almost feels like this is something a student project should do, where they just basically steal or violate the copyright of somebody because they're doing a student project and not a finished thing. The whole idea of this is for educational purposes concept would make a lot of sense, but then to put this, even if it was a student project on Steam, that's where it becomes a problem. And frankly, you're just establishing bad habits by letting a student or a Chinese company, which I guess this is probably just a Chinese company and not a student project. You're creating bad habits letting people just steal concepts like that from the beginning. Arguably, while Starry Night is very popular, it's not something that would translate to video games, and then this is kind of just a great example of it not really translating to video games. Let's see, let's do this, I guess. Then attack. Then end the turn. Next, we have a game that's all in Asian characters, and it looks like it's a tower defense top-down shooter, Chinese game. 89 cents, no to that. Here we have Drifting Weight of Feathers, which looks like it is asset flip, trying to sell on lewdness, but not being really tagged with lewdness. That being said, we're seeing a little bit of gameplay here that might actually make some sense. Like these kinds of movements we've seen in things like Bayonetta. This might be super frustrating and super crazy. This might not really work that much. This might be a game where they've bought a lot of animations of backflips and kicks, and just every time you press the A button and jump, you do a backflip, and it gets very annoying and repetitive very quickly. So, yeah. In a lot of ways, this looks like a parkour game. But it also looks like somebody is trying to do something. And we have seen in at least one other case where a game developer has tried to make a fairly decent game, and they just had a love of using a big bootied character, female character, and decide to go that way because it's their own visual preference, which we shouldn't just punish people because of that. There is something here. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but there is something here where they're saying the price will be immediately published after Steam review and submitted it. So they're being probably too upfront about pricing. Yeah. But I'd like to see some reviews on this. I suspect, though, it may just not have any relevancy. It may be super short. And certainly that is a case of a game that's catching my attention because of the interesting looking 3D model. If that wasn't there, I would really have no interest in it at all.
You want to hunt? Be my guest. The hunt has only begun.
That beast is my savior.
It looks like I'm up. You doing this?
These wheels come at me well.
Next we have a game on Steam called Chibi Girl vs. Evil Zombie Dead, which, yeah, doesn't look like much of anything. This is one of those cases where I think the name and the visual and the thumbnail all hurt it instead of helping it, because yeah, it doesn't look like there's much of a game here, but the animation style kind of gives it the thought that it might be more of a game than it really is. It kind of seems like it's mostly just an infinite platformer, and you're not even really fighting zombies that much. This game is $9.99 English, Russian, and Chinese, and yeah, that's gonna be a no for me. Let's see.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Is that how you treat a lady?
And then in the turn. Here we have that game Moon on Steam. It's already on my follow list, so I'll just leave it on the follow list. It's selling for $17.09, English and Japanese subtitles. Here we have a game called Q Simulator, which that sounds annoying. And it doesn't really even look like that's what it is. Oh, it's the simulating the experience of being in a login queue of an MMO. So it's a joke troll game that I feel like Steam shouldn't allow these kinds of troll joke games. 99 cents English, allegedly full audio. I doubt that, seriously.
You want to hunt? Be my guest. You asked for it.
Even should we fall?
What do we have here?
Is that how you treat a lady?
Attack here. Let's see. Next we have a game that's all Asian. Looks like it's a cell phone port. Doesn't look terrible for a cell phone game, but does look terrible for a PC game. Scrolling back and forth, just kind of Contra clone with a white-haired girl. Even though it's a blonde-haired girl in the thumbnail. $4.99, Chinese only.
Be gone.
We're seeing quite a bit of Chinese games. I haven't been really paying attention to the release schedules of Chinese games, but we might be seeing the beginning of something different here, in which Chinese games in particular are getting released in bundles versus what was definitely the case before. Where Chinese games were getting released
I won't let you get away.
very consistently. Okay.
Is that how you treat a lady? Just finish the job.
Next we have another Asian titled game. Looks like some kind of simulation game. It's Chinese only,
Nice
$4.49. Here we have a game called Alone But Strong, which looks like an asset flip first person shooter. $4.49, English only. Yep, and we're just gonna keep on trying to get victories here. Here we have a game called Milk Outside a Bag of Milk, which this title is a sequel to Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk. I recognize the title for being so weird.
I guess
Some countries outside of the United States do sell bags of milk. But I guess what I'd have to do here is see if the first game made it to the wish list. You can see how the art style has improved quite a bit. So you have an overwhelmingly positive visual novel game. I think I just put that on the wish list. And then this better looking version of it, rated very positively. I think you just put that on the wish list too. Both games fairly expensive, and I probably would never get around to playing them. Speaking of getting around to playing things, I need to play the last Nonary game fairly quickly too.
Luminous gate, eat it away.
But yeah, if I ever do get to the realm of covering a lot of visual novels, that would be one to consider. Let's see. Gamatsu says Gigabash adds a PlayStation 5 version, and they have a concrete trailer. This is, I believe, one of these kaiju games where you're fighting as a kaiju or a super robot against kaiju. Apparently you can play as this building called Concrete against these kaiju, which that's kind of funny. We'll have to figure out, though, at some point, if Giga Bash is more of a Smash Brothers style game than I think it originally thought it was,
Uncharted desert awaits.
and that it's kind of a fighting game versus more of a score-based challenge game, which is kind of what I thought it probably would be more of, is that
Stop it!
you would fairly quickly destroy a building as a kaiju and move on to the next building, and you wouldn't just be effectively wrestling inside of a city environment. Let's see. Rush. This would give +1/+1. Should do this. Can we evolve? No. I think you do something like this, and then
What do we have here?
Well, that's it for today.
let's see. Gamatsu says The Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai 2 Crimson Sin has been announced for PS5 and PS4. Here you're getting a thumbnail showing a high action shot and a little bit of an upskirt shot on a character. Actually, we haven't seen that as like a screenshot in quite a while, and it seemed all like that concept had been completely removed from being acceptable even in Japanese advertising, because real world upskirting definitely is a problem and is illegal, should be illegal, but playing with that fetish or fantasy in an animated, safe, fictional way was considered acceptable for a long time until arguably the SJWs got a hold of it. If I play this, I'd restore things.
And those acorns flying out of the woods.
The hunt has only begun.
Forest MVP. Hey, let's play. There's a chance for a grand slam.
What do we have here?
This,
What do we
hit
have here?
this, hit this.
Put in a good word for me, yeah?
Sigamatsu says The Legend of Nayuta Boundless Trails for Switch launches in spring of 2022 in Japan. I think this is the first I've heard of this. Seems like it's probably another JRPG. If it's a Switch-focused JRPG, though, may not get too far. In a lot of ways, I could see a lot of the Switch-focused JRPGs just dying and never having as much of a chance as it probably should
What do we have here?
to succeed, and there just not being a real high desire for remakes or sequels to Switch games. In fairness, that's not what really happened with the PSP and the Vita. Those games, plenty of those games, got continuation sequels and remakes, so I guess that's what they're hoping will
What do we
happen
have here?
in this case also.
No.
Just go ahead and
I
evolve.
won't let you get away.
I'm ready for more.
How fun!
What do we have here?
Unbelievable!
Summon a fairy. I can't help but also feel like, particularly when you're talking about JRPGs, there's a high desire to see remakes of their games higher than there really is demand of games, and that there is also a high desire to make anime games based on animes that are too old and people have already moved on from. And we'll see a great example of that later today. Eight would give me Storm. Okay. Start with this. Then this.
Life can no longer tell of its plight.
And then this.
Hey, let's play.
And then
This is the end.
So sparkly. Yeah.
that.
Strange.
And
You shall fall.
it's just not attack at all. Just leave everything there for next turn.
Embrace your
Um,
vast potential.
Square Enix has upped the word Gex trademark for Gex in Europe, which probably doesn't mean a lot, but it does potentially mean that they still plan on using the word phrase Gex, whereas Sony has upped the trademark for the Order 1886, where I feel like the previous game was called the Order 1866, but this says 86, so either I don't remember the number right, which is very possible, or we might actually be seeing the beginnings of a thought of having a sequel to the Order, which the Order as a game,
My domain reaches to the end of the
I
sky.
think it was kind of interesting to a lot of people, but kind of failed
Hey, let's play.
as far as actually being fun to play and actually feeling like a full
Marksmanship.
experience. I'm just gonna keep on playing fairies and keep on losing at this rate. Gamatsu says Red Candle Games has announced a action platformer 9 Souls. SOLS. Follow Yi on his vengeful quest against the 9 Souls. I probably am confusing
My quarry won't
Red
escape
Candle
that
Games
easy.
with a different
My
company.
blossoms will reflect in your eyes.
Red Candle Games was the creator of Detention and Devotion. And I wonder if Devotion was the game with the whole review bombing. Of that game on Steam. Red Candle Games. Shop Red Candle Games. Well, Devotion you can buy on their storefront. I guess maybe it never came back to Steam, or maybe it did come back to Steam. Let me just do a Google search.
Yeah, Devotion was the one that got the Chinese government effectively to review bomb them. And I don't think it ever was released on Steam again. According to the YouTube site, though, like, according to Google's own reviews, it's actually rated fairly high as far as games. I didn't know Google even had reviews. But yeah, you can see, like, there is a soundtrack here available for purchase, which is also, I assume, review bombed. But the actual game never came back to Steam, which I feel like Valve should have helped them out a little bit more on that one. Considering other times they've potentially manipulated review results and things like that, that it would have made a lot more sense to go that route. You know what I'm realizing also is that I should be searching with like DuckDuckGo when I right click and search something in Chrome. Search Google Secure as a right click option. Yeah, I should look into how you do that instead of getting more customized results. Not that it really matters that much, but it would be nice to get non-ad laden customized results. Moving on, Horizon Forbidden West Machinings of the Forbidden West trailer is available on Gematsu. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Physical Edition launches March 15th. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has the details for Spellshot and Callbringer classes, new environments, enemies, and mechanics. I thought this game was already out, but apparently it's not. Apparently they are just going with a different attempt on advertisement. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually is a case where they've hired a different advertising company to advertise Tiny Tina's versus Borderlands 3, and they're testing them out to see if they can do a better job, because Borderlands 3 really failed to get a lot of people interested in playing it. I don't know if that was the advertising people's fault as much as the fact that it's just Randy Pitchford's the problem, or if it's the fact that just Borderlands 3 was a problem in general, because Borderlands, the pre-sequel, came out and really should have been Borderlands 3. There was not enough time between Borderlands, the pre-sequel, and Borderlands 3 for people to become interested in playing Borderlands again. Arguably, maybe in what feels like over 10 years of playing Borderlands games, the gimmick may have worn out its welcome. Let's see, Gran Turismo 7 has powered by the PS5 developer diary, according to Gematsu, if you're interested in that. Circuit Superstars for PS4 launches January 27th for PS4, obviously.
Chris Tale update is now available. It has a new character called Adria, a new dungeon, and new ending. I kind of want to see what Chris Tale is. I vaguely recognize the game
The magic of flowers
name.
is profound.
Yeah, it's an RPG game, I guess, but this is that kind of weird time manipulation RPG game that was announced, and then I don't think anybody reviewed it. If anything, Chris Tale's, the lack of reviews that I've seen of this is an example of how mainstream video game journalists have dropped the ball this year, even though they've had more time than ever to potentially cover more games. They've instead chosen to do other things.
Beautiful flowers in this direction.
And that is definitely highlighted in that Giant Bomb Bombathon, where they spent well over an hour just watching footage of a very, very old video game award presentation that there was just no reason for them to spend that time covering that. And the Giant Bombathon in general was showing off a whole bunch of old games and not really showing off anything new or anything that really was relevant even or informative. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is just an indication of where Giant Bomb in general wants to go, is that they're gonna all of a sudden become a much more retro game focused place. And any thoughts or ideas around covering new games are going to get put on the back burner. Guess we'll play that. Moving on, a new Puzzle Bobble game is in development, which I would almost assume that since it's such a simplistic game, it would always be in development, that you would always have this desire to make more puzzles and levels for the next game. Neptunia X Sinran Kagra Ninja Wars for Switch is coming to the West in spring 2022 alongside the PC version. Here you can see all of the special edition stuff that you get if you buy the limited edition of the game, none of which I think is particularly that much worth it, but it is nice to get extra things sometimes. Rush.
A withered life can no longer tell of its plight.
Hey, let's play. Yeah. Hey, let's play.
You shall fall.
This world is filled with mystery.
Man, I'm feeling sleepy already. Here we have a game on Steam called Super Grappling Gecko. Doesn't look visually polished enough to interest me. $1.69, English and Portuguese, Brazil. Here we have a game called Mining Cats, which doesn't look interesting. $1.19, several languages. Here we have a game called Cube Cube.
Stop it.
I suppose, even though I do whine about feeling sleepy when I live stream, and whine about a lot of things probably when I live stream, I have done a decent job of maintaining all of that on the live streams and not bringing it over to the pre-recorded footage, which I care about a lot more. This game, Cube Cube, looks like nothing of interest. English and Chinese, 99 cents. But yeah, that kind of was the point
The hunt has
of
only begun.
having the live streams, is to put all the rants, all the complaints, all the whining
Why is this so hard? I'm never ever get a
in
chance
more
to
of a
speak.
casual conversation environment. Yeah, speaking of live streaming, YouTube's chat now has an ability where you can click on somebody and go to their YouTube page, which might be useful, but probably isn't that useful.
Verifying access.
But they put the new feature
I'm not late, am I?
at the top of the pull down menu instead of putting it at the bottom of the pull down menu, because whenever you add a new feature to any kind of pull down menu or anything, you should always put it at the bottom.
Summons brings me here.
That way people's muscle memory doesn't get affected. And yeah, Google should be smart enough to know that, and it's frankly shocking that they don't.
Shutting down.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Kaminion, which looks like it's an infinite slider runner. Doesn't look terrible for what it is. It's just this is that kind of game that I don't think I'd ever really want to play. I probably want to play this a little bit more than I would want to play a frustration platforming game. Seems like the different paths flip around and you switch between two different colors.
My thunderbolts shall guide you.
In a lot of ways, this is probably not too far from what you would want to do with Sonic. Just really zoomed out
Goodbye is inevitable.
gameplay.
Farewell, Iolan.
But in a lot of ways, this also probably just highlights the problems with a Sonic game in general. Notice how this character is slightly to the left and not just center screen, so you can see things as they're coming up more. Really is not that bad. $1.19 English Portuguese results. Just still not what I'd really want to play.
Fun it is to converse.
Yeah, we have a game called Blockline Engineer, which seems like it's some kind of engineering game. I think one of the people I follow on YouTube was playing this game. As in a lot of ways, this feels a lot like that game Magnus Opum that I covered relatively recent and hasn't even aired yet. In the sense that you're effectively just working on a conveyor belt assembly line.
This world is filled with mystery.
But in Magnus Opum, or Opus Magnum, I think is actually what it was called, you're being constrained into this weird concept of alchemy, whereas Blockline Engineer actually looks like real world stuff you might try and build. I don't think it's still quite to that point, though. In a lot of ways, this feels like working with a Connects or
Nice marksmanship.
Lego Technique concepts. This is $11.99 English, German, and Japanese. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just to see if, for some reason, there's a fandom that grows out around this. I don't think I really would want to play this. You probably have to program these things in some kind of weird programming concept on top of building the things. At a certain level, you might want to make a game where you just have to build the robotic arms and the programming is already hard-coded. That might be a better way to make some of these games. Here we have a game called The Tragedy of Little Joy, which looks like it's probably just a weird looking platforming game and doesn't really feel like it has a consistency. It's tagged as a platformer and a visual novel game, and that's quite a difference. You can see in actual gameplay, it's pretty generic looking as far as the environments. Yeah, I don't see anything there of interest. 539, English and German, allegedly full audio in both languages, which I severely doubt. See, here we have a game on Steam called Enraged, which seems like it's a beat 'em up shooter game, side scroller, kind of pixely. Yeah, I don't think there's enough polish here for
My
this
quarry
to
won't escape that easy.
Get
interest
out of
me.
my way!
$5.39, English, allegedly full audio. It's supposed to be you shooting a bunch of elves, so I don't know if you're playing as Santa Claus or not. Oddly Christmas themed for a low effort game. Here we have a game called Roadworks 2, which obviously is a city sim of no real interest. $2.99, English only. Here we have a game called Blind Fate Ito no Yami, which might look interesting, but then it's a prologue, so it's just a demo, so we immediately say no to prologues. They're almost always free, too. They should be free, since prologue just means demo in Steam's new lexicon. Here we have a text-based game, which we're starting to see about one of these a week now. Getting back into the habit. This is $4.79, English only. In a lot of ways, even compared to Fallout 1, a text-based game like this might work a little bit better just because the text is designed to run and be readable at a higher resolution or a higher distance from the screen. Playing games 10 feet away, like I do on my PC, does limit the ability to play some games because my eyes are just not close enough to the screen to read the text.
Don't hurt me!
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Mary Skelter 2 is coming to PC. I think this is pretty much just a dungeon crawler game,
Hey,
though, so if it does come to PC, it's going to have to be a particularly good dungeon crawler to justify really wanting to play it. Like, you've got a trailer here that's teasing a lot of weird visuals, certainly, but the actual game is just your collection of anime girls going through dungeon crawler, giving them apparently a lot of items and trying to raise their stats. And yeah, I don't know why I would play this over, say, trying to play Persona 4 Golden. Or yeah, Persona 3 if it comes to Steam. Something that has a little bit more recognition to it.
stay away!
Let's see. We had already talked about the Sega Genesis games. Neptunia Dimensions Sisters vs. Sisters, next stage version 1.02 hard drive Divinity trailer
At your service.
is now available. I don't think we probably need to look
Loser!
at every single Neptunia trailer that comes out, though. Like, I am definitely waiting to see some feedback on how well this game is received and in what direction this game is going, but I don't have any reason to really get hyped about it. Okay. 1,
Hey, let's play!
2,
Hey, let's play!
3.
Doing this?
These wheels turn. Come at me well.
Why, you little...
Let's see. DNF Duel has a Crusader trailer, yet another character being introduced. And one thing I will say about this Crusader character is that more often than not, when you're talking games that tend to lean towards the Asian art style, the anime art style, when you have somebody that looks like a Crusader, it's usually an anime girl that looks nothing like a Crusader. Where at least this has stuck more within the bounds of what you would expect a Crusader to actually look like in art. Probably still very far away from what real Crusaders would have looked like. But at least you're getting halfway towards some relative truth.
The hunt has only begun.
Always that Crusader looks more like one of the priests of the Crusades probably than an actual just military man of the Crusades fighting in the Crusades, which most of them probably just look like peasants. A Digimon Con has been set for February 26, 2022, according to Gametsu, which I imagine we won't hear too much as far as Digimon games. I think there is one that might be slightly delayed, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't say anything about that. Or maybe I'm wrong and that game isn't delayed anymore and is out. Komatsu has the Famitsu sales updated to include, I guess, the next 30 games. Yep. Series X still creeping up there on the list, where most of this year Series Xbox One, Series S, Series X's were way at the bottom, and we've seen a significant shift away from people buying PS4s or PlayStation 5 digital editions and instead getting Series S's or Series X's. Switch is still fully dominating the market. And as far as software sales, where it really counts, all 30 of these games are Switch games on the sales chart. So it doesn't even matter if people are buying PlayStation 5s, they're pretty much buying them only to try and flip them and sell them from the looks of the sales. There's just like no software sales. And remember, they lose money on the hardware sales. So with that kind of trend, Sony should be happy that they're not selling hardware.
Drop the mortal plane. Oh no!
I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a significant effort to buy things in Japan and sell them in the West, in the United States, and just scalp them. And that's why you're seeing more Xboxes being bought, is because they're just scalping all of them. So I wouldn't be surprised if that is the vast majority of what's going on. We have a game here called Match 3 Pirates 2, which is obviously just a Match 3 game. $6.99, several languages. That's way too expensive. Here we have a game called Echoes, which, if cheap, might be interesting. Looks very hand-drawn. It's kind of like a visual novel. $4.24 is about as much as I think you could start with. It's a price of $4.99. I'm gonna put this on the follow list and see if people respond well to it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just never relevant and nobody actually plays it, buys it.
I'll get it right this time. Don't hurt me.
Next we have a game on Steam called The Whisperer, which looks like it might be a survival game / walking simulator.
I'm hopeless.
I don't think there's anything here for what they're showing. It's English and French, $4.49.
Let's play.
Maybe I'm trying to be a little too generous as kind of like a find items, escape the room type game, even though you're not trapped in an actual room. I'm gonna be probably more generous than I should and put that on the fall list, but yeah, I would heavily suspect there's nothing there. Okay. Destroy an enemy or amulet. Okay. Destroy that. Do that.
Beautiful flowers in this direction.
And do that.
Let's play.
Let's see. Gamatsu has Dusk Diver 2 character skills trailers for Bahat and Vaeda,
You little.
which Dusk Diver 2 is a JRPG high action game, and these characters seem new to me. They kind of feel out of place from what I think the other Dusk Diver characters look like, which maybe they are now going in a slightly different direction to have the characters look a little bit
I'm going on ahead.
more different. There is a problem with these high action JRPG games still, in that they may very well just be JRPG games that take forever to play, and I would like to see
At 12 o'clock.
that concept addressed a little bit better.
Hey, let's play.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
This is the end.
Sorry, but the time for games is over. One helping of this and it's nighty-night for you.
Yeah, every clash is gonna buff up these guys.
You fairies are the best.
Let's see. Yamato is the Taito Milestones debut trailer. Kind of feel like we'd already seen this. All the games they announced for this are pretty unrecognizable. Elevator Action is the one game I actually recognize here.
Let's play.
And I think if we look at this trailer, it's going to actually just highlight how terrible these games are going to look even on the Switch, because they are
Nice marksmanship.
square resolution, very pixely old games. They don't even have like an artistic border or anything. They're really sticking on the edges of some of these games to make them a little bit more colorful. Just generic text in the left, and they didn't even really put a lot of effort into making sure the text fit. Yeah, that does not look like a product worth really buying. Once again, I'm just failing them miserably. And then here was what I was talking about earlier. A Full Metal Alchemist mobile game launches in summer of 2022 in Japan. First details, trailers, and screenshots. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood
My quarry won't
ended
escape that easy.
probably a decade
Mother,
ago.
father,
Like,
come
if
on.
not longer. I don't think the manga continued after that. I think the manga was done by the time Brotherhood the anime was done. It wasn't done by the time the first Full Metal Alchemist anime was made. I don't feel like there's been any kind of continuation or sequels. For a world like that, you could tell some spin-off stories, I guess, but I wouldn't particularly expect. I haven't heard of anything new happening there.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Like, they had basically, the writer had one story to tell in a very unique world, and maybe the Full Metal Alchemist movie had two stories, another story to tell in a very unique world. They basically, with the movie, established the idea of alternate realities and could have told several different stories, and they just didn't have it within them to do that. It's not too different from like Fallout, where Fallout has one story about war that it can talk about, and that's it.
Stay away. Ow.
So this is my concern, is that you're going to see more. Actually, this is the 20th anniversary, so it was 20 years ago. I'm 10 years off. You're going to see more of this happening, particularly Japanese companies and anime companies trying to bring back things that are dead. It's going to be a free-to-play game with in-app purchases from Square Enix. I think Square Enix is kind of a great example of a company that's constantly trying to make money off things and then not really caring or being fair to the companies making this. This looks like it is straight up going to be a fighting game, which is not even what Full Metal Alchemist is. There were some fighting action sequences, certainly quite a bit in the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood anime, but I never thought it was a fighting story. Definitely nothing like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, where every story was around a fight. In animes in general, there's almost always a lot of fighting. Interestingly here, they have chosen to make Winry even bigger chested than she was in the anime, and I don't know why they went that route, unless they're making an argument that somehow this is all taking place after the events of Brotherhood, which really can't be the case for what we're seeing. And see, like, that pink-haired girl that they're showing right there is not even a particularly important character.
Stay away. They're picking on me.
Like, the pink-haired girl they're showing literally shows up in like the first two episodes of the story, of the first Full Metal Alchemist and the second Full Metal Alchemist, and she doesn't play a role at all, unless I'm thinking of a different character. Yeah, it definitely looks like it's going to be just kind of a generic mobile fighting game, and will probably suck like most generic mobile fighting games suck. But if we see companies just trying to bring things back and bring things back, it's going to get fairly frustrating and destroy the idea of remasters and remakes of games that actually deserve remasters and remakes or new versions. There's a danger in my mind of oversaturation.
May the forest be at peace.
Okay. Three or 34.
The hunt has only begun.
I've got all the magic. Is that how you treat a lady?
Moving on, a Metroidvania game, Overlord Escape from Nazarick, has been announced for Switch and PC. And in a lot of ways, this is more what I would like to see instead of low-effort mobile games based on 20-year-old anime, is people trying something new. Even if this game might be a little rough looking in some of its screenshots. Any new Metroidvania at the moment should be fairly welcome, considering how you have Metroid Dread really not being a classic Metroid game as much as a new take on the idea of Metroid, and also still being Switch exclusive, and Castlevania games are completely non-existent. And I think it's either I think it's Konami that has the Castlevania series. Maybe it's Capcom. I don't think it's Square Enix, but certainly there are problems there as far as a lack of focus on Castlevania games, or a lack of interest in making Castlevania games.
I won't let you get away.
Fairies, don't push. Help me, fairies.
They should have evolved this and had this one attack first.
Hey, let's play.
Or taken the guy out and had them using this. Return the character. That would have worked also.
Nothing I can't handle.
A Princess Connect festival is set for February 12th and 13th, which basically an announcement from it, for an announcement from Gamatsu. The Sifu physical edition launches in spring of 2022. I also want to point out that Giant Bomb had Bacalar do a quick look of Sifu, and he sucked, and it wasn't even a quick look of the game. It was a quick look of a demo or vertical slice of the game, which Giant Bomb has just kind of never done that in general. And he just did a terrible job. They had to do so much editing. He was dying all over the place. Like, I don't think he can really play video games to the level where you would expect a video game journalist to play video games. And particularly for Bacalar, Jeff Bacalar at Giant Bomb, he was supposed to be the guy in charge of everything above even Jeff Gerstmann. So he really shouldn't have been the person playing the game in the first place. So the whole thing is just confused. I wonder, I mean, if you almost have to wonder if Jeff Gerstmann was unavailable and nobody else was willing to play the game, or if everybody's unavailable. Like, as for the vertical slice I saw of Sifu, it was interesting to see how many female enemies would pop up and fight, and you would just punch them in the face as much as you were punching the guys, which the Batman Telltale game also broke that barrier, unlike Batman Arkham City, where Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy never get punched in the face or slammed into the ground like all the male thugs do in Arkham City. And it still is a Arkham City that is just 100% full of male thugs, outside of Catwoman, Harley Quinn, and Poison Ivy. So it's nice to see, if you're going to inflict violence, to consider a little bit more balance there. But the actual fighting in Sifu seems like what this is the company that made that game Absolver that didn't really go anywhere, and they've taken all the fighting animations and concepts from Absolver, which I think was supposed to be like an MMO, and the characters were wearing masks and were kind of faceless. I think they've taken all of those fighting animations and that programming they put into it, and they're now trying to put it into a slightly more traditional video game, which good on them for
Well met, and farewell.
for really trying to recover from what was a bad concept that didn't really go anywhere. The main gimmick in Sifu is that every time you die, your age gets added by 1. So you start at like age 20, and then you die, and you're then age 21. But The second time you die, it's not added by 1 again. It's 1 plus, it's whatever the number was before plus 1. So n plus 1, effectively. So then second time you die, you go from 21 to 23. Pretty much what this shows, unless you get some age back somehow and it's a inconsistent number, there are probably only a few ages that are animated. That is a concept that probably needs more explanation and probably won't do too much as far as how the game plays. Maybe it slows down the character when you get older. Eventually you hit an age and it's just game over, and it does look like Sifu is a fairly difficult fighting game, maybe beyond the realm of a game I would want to play.
Who's next?
Do we want to wait?
Stay away! No!
We already talked about the Astro City Mini 5 being announced from DNF Duel has yet another trailer, this one about HP. So check that out from Gamatsu if you're interested. And then really the only
You're done for.
big news today on this Friday so far is that Tencent has acquired Turtle Rock Studios. This was the Back 4 Blood developer. It's now being owned by the Tencent Chinese conglomerate, which probably does indicate that the Back 4 Blood as a game didn't really succeed.
Who's next?
Do nothing.
Okay. Let's just, I guess, go ahead and play that.
Let's play.
The game Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo is on Steam with basically no fanfare at all. We saw when this was announced, but they really didn't put any real promotion behind it, which I wouldn't be surprised if this is a very niche game that very few people actually want to play or are interested in. I wouldn't be surprised if this is something along the lines of like the there's a whole bunch of not applicable things that you can get from the deluxe edition but you can't buy separately, and I wonder if the deluxe filters are worth it. Probably not. Yeah, I'm not even sure what the deluxe filters look like. They're not even giving you screenshots. Just like bad management and bad publishing. Now, as the problem is that you could get a publisher like Mycoids and they may just not put any effort into it. In a lot of ways, this could be like the ABC Murders game where there's just not a ton of people that are particularly interested in
I hate doing this job alone.
that aren't just particularly interested in an Alfred Hitchcock spin-off game.
Stop! Stop!
But you never know. This is definitely a game that needs to be on the fall list just to see. And we have SimRail, the Railway Simulator Prologue, which is just another prologue, so we can easily dismiss it. Here we have a game called Food Poppers, which looks like it's probably a clicker game, although it's tagged as a point and click game. Yeah. It says it's cutesy drawn, but I don't think there's enough visual polish here to get over the fact that it's not 16 by 9 and looks very generic. $1.79, English, allegedly full audio. I severely doubt that. Here we have a game called Savage Lands, which is tagged as an open world survival craft game, so I wouldn't have covered it anyways, even though it's already mixed reviewed. $6.99. Says it has single player, but I think the focus here is for open world. Even if it did have single player and was some kind of like attempt at a new Skyrim, which I guess there's been probably a lot of people who have attempted to make new Skyrim style games and failed fairly miserably, because I really think Skyrim was a lucky coincidence for us, just how well it was received, or it's a product of its time and you can't capture that lightning in the bottle a second time.
Let's play.
Here we have International Basketball Manager 22, which looks like just a simulation game. $19.99. Whole bunch of languages.
Stop it.
Here we have a game called Trash Sailors, which looks interesting visually, but you can see it's mixed reviewed and it's a co-op sailing adventure game. In a lot of ways it looks like Raft if you were to make Raft in a flat 2D art style, which in all fairness that somebody should have tried to do that way earlier than this, because Raft, even though it's still in early access and is unfinished, Raft had its heyday about 2 years ago, I would say. $17.99, several languages. I assume the reviews are going to compare it to Raft. Apparently there's game-breaking bugs in it. Completely broken at launch. Can't rebind controls. Progression broken at level. 2 desync issues. I'm gonna be generous and put this on the follow list, because maybe it could be patched. Maybe you could play this on single player. It would be an interesting comparison to Raft, particularly if I was just gonna cover Raft and then wanted something to show off to compare to that.
This is where I truly shine. No! I know when I've lost.
I won't let you get away.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady?
How could you not understand?
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called 3 Pigeons in a Trench Coat, which sounds like a funny joke game that might work. But I think the game is actually too simple for its own good. It says it has time travel, boss fights.
This is definitive proof of God's authority.
Yeah. This game is free, and so at that point I could say, just check this out if you're interested. It's English only. I don't think you probably would spend more than 20 minutes on it, though. It's probably a very short game. Right. Destroy this.
See you all next festival.
Do this.
Hey, let's play.
Do this.
These wheels turn. Come at me, well.
And do this.
How could you not understand?
Here we have a game on Steam called Solitaire Harmony, which doesn't actually look like a solitaire game. Looks like it's probably just a puzzle game of no real interest. I don't know how it really works though. 59 cents English only. Yeah, there certainly was a point where I would
agonize over looking over these kind of single screen Unity puzzle games to try and figure out how it actually played. But kind of at this point, I just dismiss it. It's a peg jumping game, effectively, where you have to jump over the other guys to. So it's peg solitaire. It is actually a solitaire game. Yeah, we have a game called Empires of the Void 2, which looks like a resource management game, board game of some sort. Looks kind of polished. It's $9.99, single player, online PvP, English, allegedly full audio. I guess I'll give this a follow. It's a 4X game. That may be its downfall for me. Its reviews may be a downfall for me. It's not being made by Asmodee Digital, but then Asmodee Digital, which was kind of notorious for making bad board games, they have since been acquired by a new company. Enemy that can't attack.
Got you in my sight. Astral Hauser! I'll strike true. I've been spotted. Stop!
Let's see. GameDeveloper.com has an obituary for the Psygnosis co-founder Ian Hetherington. He was a founder of the Wipeout and Lemmings developer Psychognosis. Yeah. Wipeout and Lemmings being a pretty old couple of game series, and he looks like a pretty old guy. We're probably going to start to see more of these kinds of obituaries, and not just because of the pandemic, but just because of old age.
The time for judgment and redemption has come.
Nice marksmanship.
Let's see. Psychogenesis created a bevy of Amiga, Atari ST, and home computer games. It was acquired by Sony in 1993, where they worked on original PlayStations by the mid and late 90s. He also co-founded World Rally Championship and Dive Club developer Evolution Studios alongside Martin Kinwright, and served as chairman of the Crackdown developer Real Team Worlds. I guess that would be Crackdown 1. So he was in the video game industry that whole time, where we have seen a lot of cases where a lot of people retire and then they're relevant and still should get an obituary, but they haven't done anything lately. GameDeveloper.com also has a report that Bungie's longtime head of HR is stepping down. Gail DeHont will no longer be the head of HR at Bungie after a damning article revealed years of alleged toxicity enabled by longtime employees, which, yeah, I don't think we're at the end of hearing those kinds of stories. We probably are not at the end of hearing this story either. CD Projekt Red has settled Cyberpunk 2077 launch lawsuit for $1.85 million. Which this lawsuit I think is from the shareholders. Yeah, it was filed by investors over the bad launch or of Cyberpunk 2077, which at a certain point, yeah, if you're investing in a company because allegedly you should be investing in a company because you have faith in the company. If you don't have faith in the company, you shouldn't be investing in it. And then if the company does not produce as much as you like, you really shouldn't have as much grounds as you probably do to then sue the company. The whole concept of stock ownership is just crazy. It's like, think of it on a short-term scale. Hey, I got a quick disconnect free win. Yay, won.
one over the course of probably a week.
Looks like I won.
I've definitely made Shadowverse more difficult for myself by fixing my network issues. Yeah. Unless we can get some other quick disconnects, and there's just network troubles happening all over the place right now. There have been more of the Amazon warehouse network troubles. But yeah, to get back to what I was talking
My
about,
quarry won't escape that easy.
on a personal level,
Father, come on.
what kind of fool would you be if you gave $10 to somebody you barely knew and yet somehow had felt you should trust them with your $10, with the expectations that they would pay you back at some point in the future? Like, you're a pretty big fool there. Never lend money. Some people do that, and I guess maybe the same people that lend money to friends are the same fools that would invest in companies. Or the truth is, most people that are investing in companies are being forced to invest in companies because of the trickery of how 401ks and retirement plans are set up. Whereas legally, I think there probably should be requirements that all retirement plans are heavily backed, if not 100% backed, by bonds and guaranteed return investments such as bonds or savings accounts. And I guess banks in general also play on that same foolishness where you're lending your money to a bank so that they can then use it for the slight benefit of having a debit card or checkbook. And really there's a lot of systems built around the idea of needing a bank account when ideally and originally the United States and every country was supposed to be a cash carrying society.
Throwing in the towel yet.
But yeah, definitely strikes me as a little crazy that you can just sue somebody when they don't make enough money as an investor. And I guess that is another example of having too much money in the first place.
What do we have here?
You can afford to lose money and then sue the people because they lost money. Moving on, Final Fantasy 15 sales have been paused because the game is too popular. Which is a weird way to phrase it, to say basically server congestion has been a big deal, and I wouldn't be 100% certain to believe that it actually is a server congestion because a lot of new people are playing it these days, as much as maybe Square Enix has shut down some of the servers and reduced the amount of bandwidth there. Also, GameDeveloper.com has this featured blog with real data and said Epic's plans for Epic Games Publishing, which, yeah, you might want to read this if you're a game developer. Well, we will see how much the idea of Epic Games being a direct publisher would affect things, if at all, in the long run. Probably, I suspect, not that much, because my guess is that
What do we have here?
You're mean.
The hunt has
Epic
only
Games will be even less successful as a publisher as they have been with a store runner, which definitely that's been the case as the Epic stores failed to gain even a solid third position. I would say it probably goes Steam is way at the top, and then if you skip the iOS store and the Google Games Store, since they're not PC platforms, I wouldn't be surprised if the next biggest platform is something like Good Old Games or even Uplay, just because Ubisoft has a lot of games. And then below that, for fourth position, I wouldn't be surprised if even the Microsoft Store is winning out compared to the Epic Games Store. Maybe not, but yeah, I would say the Epic Games Store at best is probably in the 4th position as far as people using it. And maybe even lower, because then you start to think about, well, maybe the Battle.net people and all the people playing World of Warcraft, that might be the 3rd biggest platform. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Mon Bazu, which it just looks like an asset flip game of no interest. $11.99, English allegedly full audio, that's way too expensive. Here we have a game called Color Slots, which doesn't look like anything of interest. $2.39, English only. Still have a lot of games open to look at. Here we have something called Woodland Empire, which we can say no to. $4.49, English third-party account. Right. Do this. And then do this.
And farewell.
Should I just evolve here and attack? I guess.
won't let you get away.
You're mean.
Here we have a game on Steam called Song in the Smoke, which looks like it's a VR hunting game, maybe? Survival adventure game. I kind of like some of the art style, but particularly if you're going to tell me this is a VR game. I'm not sure there's quite enough gameplay here. $29.99. It is a VR game. I'm going to put that on the follow list. This might be the first game that has archery in it, that has more of a game than just basic archery in it. Enough that there might actually be something worth playing here. It still feels fairly unsmooth, though, how you're fighting these enemies and swapping around between a bow and a club. There's a funny line of dialogue where the guy is insulting somebody for having flesh on top of different style bone structure.
Don't hurt me.
Right.
How's that?
Next we have a game called Cuba Factorium, which doesn't look like a kind of game I'd want to really play, even though it's rated very positively. A lot of these factory simulators at this point I've given up on even thinking about playing. Doesn't look terrible though for the people that would like that. $17.99, English, German, French. Kind of expensive, but not crazy expensive.
Nothing I can't handle. No way.
Here we have a game called Celerity, which looks like just a parkour asset flip wall running game, which we're starting to see. We've now for months been seeing games like this that are really just kind of asset flip games. And there's a difference certainly here compared to the game with the big bootied character, in that there's no big bootied character. Otherwise, this may have caught my attention a little bit more. I can't help but think that maybe full first-person perspective for these kind of parkour actions also are not beneficial and would cause motion sickness. See. Attack here. Return this. And I guess play this. We're still just waiting for maybe getting to the 12th turn. If I really did this right now, I could deal 5 damage to 2 cards. Yeah, I'm gonna have to say no to celerity. $5.24 English only. Celerity. I don't even know how you'd really pronounce that. We have a game called Against, which looks like it's a VR beat 'em up hack and slash shooter. Several different VR things. And it kind of feels like you're just fighting a lot of different monsters in a lot of different environments, so it doesn't really feel like there's any consistent theme to it. It also is tagged as a rhythm game, so I wouldn't be surprised if these are actually like sequences that are backed by music, and so this is just a different take on something like Beat Saber. It's early access, $15.99 English only. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, and you can see this one was actually in the discovery queue, which it's always weird.
A divine summons brings me here.
And play that.
Hey, let's play.
Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Search All Seashells, which is obviously just a hidden object game. I'm done at looking at those kinds of games. $1.19. Whole bunch of languages, full English in every language that Steam supports, it's saying. Here we have a game called Trails of Proelium, which, looking at the thumbnail, looking at the game, doesn't quite look visually polished enough. Maybe it's an RPG Maker game, maybe it's not, doesn't really matter. $14.39 English, allegedly full audio.
Stop it! Stop it!
We haven't actually seen one of the RPG Maker games with adult content in a couple of days, so I would be surprised if I didn't see one by the time next Friday happens. This Friday also, we're not seeing any adult games come out again, which, yeah, they always seem to be, it always seems to be every other Friday. And since it was last Friday and last weekend. Okay. Is there any way we can...
Quit while you're ahead, loser. Yeah, I love this job. Of course I do.
This whirlwind is my anger incarnate!
Hey, let's play.
Yeah, that's not gonna help either. I don't think anything saves me here. Still gonna lose.
Nothing I can't handle.
Here we have a game called Scream Cap, which seems to be something like a visual novel
This little hex's payback.
around live streaming.
Nice marksmanship.
Like a visual novel around people live streaming their ghost hunting activities. So, kind of complicated there. $9.59 early access. I don't know why a visual novel really needs to be early access, but I'll be generous and put it on the follow list. I think we can pretty much say I'm done for the day as far as playing Shadowverse. We're not getting anywhere close. We still have some games to go through. I don't need to go through every game, but I don't want to leave a ton for Monday either. I saw some news about Cygames. I think Cygames censored another one of their mobile games where they had a young looking lolly anime girl that
was shirtless, but her hair was covering her chest in the Japanese version, and then they zoomed in the camera to basically go show just her shoulders and her head in the global version. And yeah, they had previously promised to never censor any of the global version, and that was their mistake, certainly. I guess we'll just end opening cards. If we're opening like 10 packs and getting a whole bunch of cards, it would make a lot of sense that I should be able to rebuild some better deck building or game winning decks. But that all takes time, and I just don't want to put the time into it. I feel like there should be an automated system here where you're given 10 recommended decks that are updated with every new expansion, that are very well thought out and have a high chance of winning, at least approaching a 50% win ratio, whereas I'm somewhere around below a 20% win ratio, I think, with the decks I'm playing. Like, I easily go through 4 or 5 games and don't win. They could also just fix their system so that you don't have to get wins. That's what Hearthstone did, is they got rid of a lot of win requirements in favor of amount of damage you do or the amount of cards you play. Yeah, it's just a shame that Hearthstone was run by Activision Blizzard, otherwise I'd still just be playing Hearthstone today. You know what, we'll just leave that one pack for Monday. And then we'll leave that, since the only daily thing we really needed to do was the free daily. Well, we also have a arena run that needs to be done, but yeah, I just don't have the energy for it. So I'll maybe play it off screen. Now let's try and burn through some more games. Here we have Geometric Sniper Z, which I think we can say no to. $2.79, third party EULA, English, Portuguese, Brazil. Third party EULA is probably the worst part about that. Here we have something called Hyper Justice, which obviously is going to be a no. $4.49, English, allegedly full audio. Here we do have an adult content game called Cowgirls, which, yeah, that was one of the things, certainly. Let me make sure this is YouTube family friendly. That was something that certainly I wanted to try and make clear to Censored Gaming, is it's not like every single adult game is limited to the weekend. They let a few out. This one came out on the 16th, so Thursday. But they're clearly, if you were just to do a statistical distribution of games and the release dates, the fact that almost everyone that has adult nudity or sexual content is limited to the closer to the weekends, Thursdays and Fridays, than others, shows that there's some manipulation. It really shouldn't be a case where you have to hire a mathematician. This Cowgirls game, I have no idea what it actually is. As far as it looks like it's just a jigsaw puzzle game. 84 cents, whole bunch of languages. But yeah, it's fairly obvious to me. I've been following it long enough. It is also worth mentioning that the Cowgirls game there was a Western looking game, and so it seems like they don't put their thumb on the scales as much with Western animation styles as they do Eastern animation styles, which are almost always over the weekends. Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach is here. We'll put that on the fall list, although this may be a game that's... Nope, it's single player only. $39.99 might be a little too expensive for Five Nights at Freddy's game. This might also be the only Five Nights at Freddy's game that's actually worth playing, whereas the previous ones are kind of rough and kind of bad and were only popular because PewDiePie and other streamers were playing them. Here we have a game called Chesscraft, which looks far too generic for its own good. $3.99. Bunch of languages, which chess should be supporting a bunch of languages. We have something called Astassos, which seems like it's probably a dragon furry type game, visual novel. It says it's a card game battler, but every single animation of these animals is big beefcake characters. Lots of muscles, lots of skin covering. Which is certainly an interesting kink. And in fairness, when you look at something like how Shadowverse was originally made, it's not so much that way now, but there was a lot of emphasis on the female form and attractive females in Shadowverse, so turnabout is fair play. So I'm going to give this a follow just to see if it comes out of early access, if people like it. In a lot of ways, though, third-party accounts, third-party EULAs, in-app purchases, English and Chinese games, the actual cards themselves and interface. Yeah, actually that's too much. I would really have to bend over backwards to keep this on the follow list. But I would be interested in seeing something like this. Perhaps maybe not just focusing on anthropomorphic creatures, though. Next, we have a game called Chesscoven Bishop, which looks like it's a chess puzzle game of no interest. I wonder if this was made by the previous chess game developer. I don't think so. 74 cents, bunch of languages. Maybe we're going to start seeing a lot of chess games because of that Netflix series about chess. Gems of Magic's Father's Day is just a match 3 game. $6.99, bunch of languages. Yeah, we have a game that's all in Asian characters, which just looks like a Chinese game. Maybe something similar to like Oregon Trail even. I could only speculate. It's $2.69, Chinese only. Here we have a game called Alan and the Kid, which looks like garbage. VR, $5.94. It's a little too cheap for VR. Yeah, we have a game called Carnage Cross, which looks like a car battler game. There might be something to this. I suspect there isn't. Early access, $4.99, single player only, English only. I'm gonna be generous and put this on the follow list, just mostly because I don't want to even have to think about it and decide. Here we have another adult game, one of these RPG games where they're scantily clad in the dialogues in a few places, and usually that's patched also. Otherwise, it's just a very generic RPG maker. And yeah, I was saying if I hadn't seen a game like this in the next week or two, I would have started to think maybe there was a bit of a crackdown on those, but obviously not. I was premature on that thought. This is $11.99, English, Japanese, and Chinese. And doesn't seem like there is actually any nudity in it, or a patch available via DLC on Steam. There probably is a patch somewhere. Here we have another game that looks like it's just all text in Chinese or Japanese. $4.49, Chinese only. So obviously that's a no. Here we have another game that looks like a Chinese dungeon crawler of no real interest. Early access, no reason why that should be in early access. It's actually a Japanese game for $26.99, which that is also way too expensive. Here we have a game called Murder Diaries 3 Santa's Trail of Blood, which just looks like an asset flip joke horror game. $7.99 English, allegedly full audio. I guess the question is there Murder Diaries 1 and 2? Yes. And it came out in September was Murder Diaries 1, and it doesn't even have enough reviews to be relevant, even though it is 100% positive for the 23 reviews it has. But at a certain level, my standards probably should go up above like 30 reviews, because it's not crazy that you could get 30 people to positively review your game. You could pay 30 people to positively review your game on Steam. And if I did raise up the limit to like 100 reviews, that would be that would eliminate a lot of niche games also on the wish list, which might not be a bad idea. Here we have some kind of weird, feels like a joke Chinese game. $1.79 Chinese only. Save the princess, save a fart. Here we have a game called Margot the Bean Adventure, which, yeah, that doesn't look like anything of interest. $3.19 English and Arabic. Here we have Spirit Hunter. It's another one of these 3D models where the character is just like tied up. Yeah, these kind of 3D models just asset flipped into a dungeon. Again, tagged sexual content and nudity. They really aren't even following the 2-week rule. Seems, but I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why whoever works at Valve and approves these games for when they release, this one's $4.99 English and Chinese. Obviously, that's gonna be a no. I wouldn't be surprised if he's working ahead of schedule normally to get out from working Christmas week. Masterpieces jigsaw puzzle here. I don't think is even out yet, but it's just a jigsaw puzzle game anyway, so I wouldn't put it on the follow list. Super Headball doesn't look like anything of interest. $5.39 English only. Unreal Engine 5 shooter game is obviously garbage. Free English only. Yep. One of the things I was going to say while covering the Batman Telltale game, and I forgot about it, was the fact that the Batman Telltale game tried really hard to have characters in the background, but the engine just could not handle it. They could get maybe 10 people on the screen at the same time at most. Whereas you look at the new metahuman NPC auto generation features that the Unreal Engine has. Yeah, this Endless War looks uninteresting to me. It's free to play, English full audio. When you look at the metahuman generation there, it would be way easier using Unreal Engine to have made the Batman Telltale game and have a lot more people in the background and really make Gotham, a city that they say in the game has 10 million people, feel like it has 10 million people in it, instead of having a press conference where you barely get 6 news reporters and that's it. Nobody else shows up. Here we have a game called Power Pushout, which they say is a board game, and I guess it is. So they've put a lot of animation on some kind of board game where you're pushing characters off the edge. This definitely feels like a Chinese game. If anything, what they've probably done here is they've created something that might have too much animation for its own good. $7.99 English full audio. I'll give this a follow just to see if I'm wrong, but it does feel like they've maybe over animated and slowed down the process of actually playing the game. Here we have a game called Stinky Feet the Adventure of Bigfoot, which looks like garbage. $12.74 English only. That is way too expensive.
Here we have Miss Nico. Let me make sure these are all YouTube family friendly images. It's a match 3 game. I'd say this one's getting a little on the borderline. Match 3 game with anime cat girls. It's tagged with not safe for work and nudity. But in general, it is just a match 3 game. It's $1.79, Japanese full audio. Yeah. It doesn't seem like there's really any conversations or any other gameplay outside of it. You're just matching the different colors of the gems, and I think that eventually allows you to get coins to buy foods to woo the cat girls, and of which there looks like there's only 4 cat girls, and I wouldn't be surprised if that boils down to about 16 still nude lewd images. Next we have a game called Learning Life Mystery 24/7, which definitely looks like an asset flip game. Free, Finnish only. Here we have a game called Vampire Survivors, which doesn't look particularly interesting. Yeah, if you told me this was a 1990s game, maybe then I'd consider it, but then it still would be a case of a game that I don't remember, so it's not very relevant to me. Looks like it's a pretty massive number of enemies on your top-down bullet hell shooting, but it doesn't really matter because they're just little tiny dots. This is $2.69, English only. Here we have Santa's Slippery Slope, which a little late to be releasing a Santa-themed game. This doesn't look terrible if this was kind of free, but for $6.99 I think that's too expensive. English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Space Survival, which looks terrible. $4.99, English only. Here we have Simple Planes VR, which doesn't look particularly interesting. $7.99, English only. Man, it's just the same old, same old. Here we have a game called Christmas Massacre, which looks like garbage. $7.19. It'd be kind of crazy if somebody is actually taking notes of whether I say a game looks like garbage or is not appealing, and they've categorized like everything I said and made a rating system when I'm desperately trying not to actually have a rating system at a general observation of what a game looks like. Yeah, I'd say don't waste your time on that if somebody would thought about doing that. This Block See the World game, also not particularly interesting. Tetris / spelling feels like you just make the game way too complicated, trying to do 2 things at once. $4.24, English only. We can see the beginning of the end. So I think we'll go through just maybe a couple more games and then call it a day. Pong Temple here. Doesn't look particularly interesting. Early access, 99 cents, English only. Here we have Chill Corner, which, yeah, that doesn't quite feel like a game either. It seems like you're just decorating a corner of a room. It's free, but then there's DLC. Says it supports 11 languages. Alright, so what I'm gonna do is just kind of click on everything and see if there's any adult games to mention. And there's kind of no reason to even do that, but that was my first thought. And then we'll leave everything else for Monday. Gametsu has Behind the Frame, the finest scenery, coming to the PS4 and Switch in spring of 2022. This game, Tumble, looks uninteresting for $1.99. And then a dinosaur tycoon management simulation game called Parkosaurus is coming to the Switch in spring of 2022. And then, yeah, I'm gonna just look at the... I mean, I might as well just be talking about the games if I'm gonna look at them, but... yeah. Could also be curating and closing some of these games. That's also something I could be doing instead of just mentioning them, but there's really no reason to not just talk about every single game or nearly every single game. A lot of these games were left over from Wednesday, so they came out on the 15th. Alright, well, then that means I'm just going to go through my Twitter feeds and see if there's anything new to talk about that have come out in the last 3 hours and 20 minutes. Yet another chess game. Definitely kind of feel like we've hit a point where a couple of companies are trying to make chess games a thing again. Yeah, barely 5 or 6 games actually even came out in the last 3 hours because it's fairly late on Friday. Let's see if GameDeveloper.com has anything. I definitely take it from the idea that Tencent acquiring Turtle Rock Studios is an example of how Back 4 Blood did not really succeed enough to keep them independent. Although you could arguably say maybe they succeeded so well that that's why Tencent wanted to acquire them. There's probably something in the middle. They probably were thinking that they were going to sell and be acquired, but they tried to raise their valuation as much as possible with the sales of Back 4 Blood. Ideally, that would be what you would want to do, is sell your company for as much as possible. Although there is some trickery, I think, in that too, in the negotiation of an acquisition, as far as just at what price the shares would be bought at and whether or not that could be manipulated or not. So you got 2 more tabs to look at and then we'll be done for the day. Back 4 Blood and Warner Brothers Games, which I guess Warner Brothers was the company working with Back 4 Blood for Turtle Rock Studios, are promoting one-time use, new one-time use cards, which, yeah, there's a lot of microtransactions in Back 4 Blood that really make it unlikely that you'd want to actually play it. I wonder if Tencent acquiring Turtle Rock Studio has more to do with the fact that Warner Brothers has just been acquired. They're trying to AT&T acquiring Warner Brothers is trying to get out of the video game business with Warner Brothers. That might be very much the case. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a very different Warner Brothers who's just not that interested in either licensing Warner Brothers properties to video games or being directly involved in the publishing or development
of video games, and maybe they are still willing to license, but they're going to be more hands-off, which arguably it might be better if they're more hands-off. Still scrolling down my Twitter feed. Yep, that looks like that's all the news I'm gonna get. So that's gonna be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening. Okay. That's bugged.